Hello, I am Kris Bentley, and I am a staff person at Lexington Theological Seminary in Lexington, Kentucky. Since 2014, I have worked with Lilly endowment-funded grant projects at LTS. These projects have enabled us to conduct research concerning bivocational ministry. As a pastor in Central Kentucky prior to working at the seminary, I also spent some time serving as a bivocational minister myself. In this series of short videos, we hope exposure to perspectives of bivocational ministers and congregations they serve provide you resources for better understanding the implications of bivocational ministry, as well as for reflecting on approaches to pastoral leadership. A good place to begin, I think, is to ask a simple question. What do we mean when we say bivocational ministry? A definition we are using in our research project at LTS is that a bivocational minister is one who has a recognized pastoral position in a congregation and also has employment outside that congregation. Many different terms are used across various Christian traditions. You may see some familiar terms appearing on this slide. Early in research at LTS, we spoke with some individuals who were serving as bivocational ministers already, and they told us a number of things that were really helpful. One thing they said clearly was that they did not think the term part-time ministry was an adequate term for the ministry that they were involved in. Since that time, we also learned that some actually prefer that term. Yet, whatever term is used, it is increasingly clear that a significant number of churches in North America are led by ministers who hold employment outside the congregations they serve. This has long been the case for many Protestant congregations, especially those in rural areas, as well as for African American, Hispanic, Latinx, immigrant, and refugee communities. It has also been a strategy for planting new churches in a variety of contexts. According to the National Congregations Study, which contacted a representative cross-section of more than 3,500 congregations in the United States, roughly 1/3 of congregations have lead ministers who also hold another job. The current awareness of the reality of bivocational ministry is also expressed in the vocational expectations of theological school graduates. In 2017, responses to the graduating student questionnaire of the Association of Theological Schools showed that 30% of graduates from theological schools in the U.S. and Canada expected to hold another paid position in addition to their ministerial work after they graduated, with higher percentages among African American and Hispanic Latinx graduates. An article published in 2019 has a provocative title, Are Bivocational Clergy Becoming the New Normal? Authors Samuel Perry and Cyrus Schleifer pose the question because of, and this is a quote from them, the growing assumption that bivocational arrangements are becoming the standard for pastors across religious traditions, with some referring to it as the new normal, end of quote. In response, they point to the difficulty in making the claim due to data limitations when it comes to counting clergy in the U.S. across the spectrum of traditions, and the many factors impacting both the clergy labor market and the resources available to congregations to compensate clergy. Yet, while it may not be fully proven that bivocational ministry is the new normal, we do know that the number of ministers earning supplemental income outside a congregation increases as churches face economic challenges. Because bivocational arrangements supplement what a congregation pays their clergy, they contribute to financial stability. This appeals to many congregations, especially those with smaller membership struggling to adequately compensate their ministers. While the full impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is still unfolding, it appears to have added to the challenges. When most congregations in the United States ceased in-person worship in mid-March 2020, and the majority, 86%, moved their worship online, financial contributions were negatively impacted, since most congregational giving comes through individuals during a worship service. In September 2020, the Lake Institute on Faith and Giving published a report on their COVID-19 congregational study. It indicates that the pandemic was hitting smaller congregations particularly hard. 30% reported they had to reduce personnel expenses during the pandemic, and that was more than twice the overall rate of the congregations in the study. This study found that with little access to PPP funds and already leaner budgets, clergy in smaller congregations were most likely to feel the direct financial effects of the pandemic. In this, the pandemic magnified existing challenges facing smaller congregations, which make up the majority of all congregations. The pandemic exacerbated an already existing resource gap for smaller congregations, impacting their potential for vital ministry and their capacity to compensate ministers. Many of these smaller congregations are led by bivocational pastors. Thank you for viewing this video presentation. As you think about some of the information that has been shared in it, you're invited to consider a few questions related to the diverse vocabulary used in connection with bivocational ministry. First, why is there such diversity? Also, what term do you prefer for what we often call bivocational ministry, and why do you prefer it? And also, are there some terms you find objectionable? Why or why not?